All right, modulators. So modulators are a new tab that have just showed up in Live 11 or Live 12. And you probably already know what some of these are. If you were with us for part 4 of this class, where we talked about synthesis, then you're already familiar with a lot of modulators. Modulators are anything that applies control of something else. It modulates that, right? We saw it in synthesis all over the place. We have an LFO. An LFO is an oscillator that latches onto another oscillator and controls it. Therefore, it is a modulator. It modulates that. An envelope, the ADSR thing, that's a modulator. In synthesis, we have FM, where we have one or more oscillators that are carriers and then one or more that are modulators. They are controlling some or all elements of another one. So modulators are just things that affect something else. We could make an argument that any kind of automation is a type of modulation. So these modulators are going to be things that control other things. Now we can see just from the icons that these are all Max for Live devices, right? Again, that doesn't really mean very much other than that we can pop them open and rewrite them or make them do different things just for fun. But otherwise, they're just normal effects. Now, these are not audio effects or MIDI effects. These are kind of some of both. We're going to see some of both in here. Also in here, there are some redundancies, like envelope MIDI we already saw in MIDI effects, envelope MIDI. So we'll deal with those as they come up. So let's dive in. Okay, envelope follower. This is really cool. This is a really, really cool utility. So let's make a new track, but I'm going to make an audio track. And let's find some long sample to put on it. I'm trying to find like a very obvious thing we can do with this. No.
Standing in the rain, feather down in...
All right, let's use that one. Okay, so here's a long vocal sample. Okay, now let's find one of our other sounds and see what we can do with it. Okay, let's maybe not that one. Okay, let's use this one. This will be a little weird. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my envelope follower and put it on this MIDI track, okay? Now, look where it put it, first of all. That's going to tell us that this is an audio effect because it put it after the instrument, which is fine. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at the audio and kind of extrapolate an envelope that is doing. Okay? There it is. It says there's a little envelope. Let's boost it. Okay, we can shape it a little bit with some of these controls here. Okay, so now I can map that envelope to anything I want, any other parameter. So I'm going to click on map. Then I'm going to go over to the volume of this other track, my vocal sample. Okay? Now, that envelope is going to control the volume of the vocal sample. Cool?
Maybe it's a possibility. I don't know if I'll see you again. It's the end, I don't know. Standing in the rain, water on my window pane. I was doing silly things just to make you mad. In between you and the...
Right? So, and I can do the same thing. I go to this list and say, I also want that map to control our bass line. Cool. Let's get out of that. So basically what we've done is we've taken the volume envelope from a track, from a sound, and applied it to anything else. Let's hear the whole thing. Okay, I like that on the vocal. I don't love it on that bass line. So I'm going to go here and just kill that one. Okay, now it's so you can make that envelope do anything you want. Okay, envelope MIDI. Now we've already seen envelope MIDI. This is a redundant one. We put it here on our drift track. So with envelope MIDI, we can do a very similar thing, except kind of backwards in a way. We can draw an envelope and then apply that to any MIDI parameter. Okay, so this one is a MIDI effect. It's going to come before the instrument and let us control any element of the instrument, but it's essentially the same as the envelope follower, but just kind of backwards. So, you know, we've got the amount here. We can customize it a little bit, our envelope, and then use this tool to grab any parameter in our instrument here. You can do the same thing. You can grab multiple parameters and control multiple things. I don't think with this one we can go outside of this track. I was wrong. We super can. So now this envelope is controlling the panning on our electric. I don't love that, so I'm gonna turn it off, but apparently we can't do that. So the envelope MIDI can control any parameter just with a ADSR envelope. All right, expression control, another one we've seen before. We used it on our electric here. This is the one where we've got some parameters, but also random and increment that we can use to control our MIDI instrument. So this one, like envelope MIDI, is both a modulator and a MIDI effect. So it is designed to control parameters of something else, which makes it a modulator. So that's why they've listed it twice. But, you know, it's worth thinking about these as modulators, as something that can modulate something else, as you're thinking about using them to create music. So just pointing that out again. Let's move on to our next one, LFO, which is new. All right, let's look at this LFO modulator. Now, this one is very similar to envelope follower, except that instead of grabbing the envelope from something else, it's just going to generate an LFO. Now, if you remember from synthesis, an LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. It's an oscillator that's just kind of going, and we can latch on to that pattern and apply it to another parameter, using it as a modulator, modulate something else. This effect is wild because it's basically put an LFO on anything kind of a thing. So let's put it down here. This effect, this sound is that kind of long sustained thing. Let's turn this off. This sound. Okay, let's add a little more shape to that, a little more motion to it with this LFO. Okay, so here's our LFO. Note that it's an audio rate device, so it's over on the right side of our instrument. But so we can use it for anything. So we can shape our LFO in all kinds of ways. We can say, you know, a triangle, have it go up and down, stray, kind of a meandering one. I kind of like that. Let's go with that. Let's set it to divisions of the beat, depth, offset, phase, and then let's map it to something. So we could go back to our MIDI device and map it to this filter. See what it's doing there. Let's hear it. That's interesting. Let's map it also to the high pass, but let's do it opposite. So we'll go 100 here and negative 100 here, so they're moving in opposite directions. It's kind of fun. Gives it a little bit more motion. Now let's map it to this drive, but less. It's cool. We could also map it to any other parameter. I mean, let's go to meld and say the shape. See, I just grabbed the shape of that meld. So you can map it to tons of stuff. It doesn't need to all be the same device. It can be all over your session. It's a lot to keep track of as you're working on it, but it's giving us some cool sounds. See, it's just becoming much more alive. You know, it's like all these modulation elements are really just giving us like, it's like putting electricity into Frankenstein, you know, or not Frankenstein, the monster that is Frankenstein. Everyone makes that mistake. Anyway, breathing life into it. Let's move on. All right, I'm feeling like we need some kind of groove here. So I threw in this drum loop. And let's see if we can make it work with our next modulator, which is Shaper. Oh, and we've seen Shaper before. Or have we? We've seen a MIDI Shaper, but this is audio. So this is different. There's Shaper MIDI and there's Shaper audio. You can see that we are going to see Shaper MIDI again. It's the next one. But this is an audio version of the same effect. So all that really means is that we can map this to something different. So what if I put this on this drum loop? I don't think this is going to sound particularly interesting, but maybe if I did some kind of pattern. Let's put it here. Yeah, see, it's going a little too fast. Let's slow it down. So I can slow it down a little bit. Okay, so let's make this less extreme. Let's pull this down. Let's raise these up, pull these down. See if I can get... Yeah, that's not really working for me. So let's try a different mapping. Let's maybe do a little bit of mapping on the panning, maybe. Well, let's make it kind of random. There we go. Now we're kind of moving around a little bit with the panning. Subtle, but not bad. So the Shaper thing, we can basically map to anything. It works the same as MIDI, except we can do some audio things with it. Cool. Okay, now we're back to our Shaper MIDI, which we have down here. And this one, you know, like it looks exactly the same. It can do the same stuff, except it goes on our track before, on a MIDI track. So it's a little bit easier to keep track of what's going on because we can see our MIDI parameters very quickly. But otherwise, it's basically the same device. Okay, before we wrap up this section, I do want to point out one thing that I kind of skipped over, and that is that we do have some interesting presets here for all of these. Not all of them, most of them. So explore those. So Shaper MIDI doesn't, but Shaper does, and this can get you some cool effects. So explore those presets. Now, let me give you this session again if you want to see how we did this mapping. You're welcome to play around with it, rip it apart, have some fun. And then we'll move on to audio effects.